Welcome to my presentation on influence diagrams. I'm Isabel Evans and I'm the Quality Manager at Dolphin Computer Access. I'm going to talk about influence diagrams because in the change program we've run over the last few years, I've been using them increasingly to help me think about the change program, and in particular where unexpected things happen as a result of improvements that we've implemented. Because I found them so invaluable, I wanted to do this presentation to explain to you how to build and use them so that you can apply them in your own teams or organisations, or even to think about how you yourself are approaching problems and solutions. I'm going to explain to you what an influence diagram is and how to construct one, and out of that I'll discuss why they're useful and how to use them to drive change. So first of all, let's think about what an influence diagram is. It's a diagram made of circles or nodes which describe situations, behaviours, actions, and arrows which point to other nodes or situations or behaviours which may be caused by the first. So A leads to B. It's a diagram to help you think about why things have happened and what might happen next. So for example, if I eat cake, that may lead me to become fat. Now, it won't necessarily do that. It depends on all sorts of other circumstances, but it's a possible influence, eating cake, to putting on weight. And if we extend that diagram a little bit, if I eat more cake, that's going to lead me to put on more weight, which may lead me to feeling unhappy about myself and feeling sad. And if I'm a comfort eater, that may lead me to eating more cake. And what we can see now is I've got caught in a vicious circle of behaviours, eat fat, sad, which is self-perpetuating. It's going round and round in circles. So I need to break out of that cycle. This is the first thing that's very useful about influence diagrams. They help you identify vicious circles of behaviours and situations, which is what you need to break out of in order to improve. Now, there is a strict definition of an influence diagram, which is, for example, on Wikipedia, as a compact graphical and mathematical representation of a decision situation. And that strict definition talks about things like Bayesian networks and probability. For me, that's not tremendously helpful in understanding how to use them. And I don't find the strict notation very useful either, which has different shaped boxes for decisions, uncertainties and values, and different types of arcs for information, conditions and functions. So I don't use that. I just ignore all of that personally. It's just a diagram that helps me think about why things have happened and what might happen next. So here's our vicious circle again, eat, fat, sad. I need to break out of that, and I'm going to break out of that by saying after eating I'm going to do some exercise, and that's going to lead me to become fitter, which is going to lead me to feel better about myself, and I'm not going to stop eating. Clearly you've got to carry on eating, but I'm going to eat some better things. So now what I've done is broken out of that vicious circle by introducing a virtuous circle, which is also self-perpetuating and which will lead into continuous improvement. So that's the second thing that's useful about influence diagrams. It helps you to think out virtuous circles which break you away from the vicious circles. And the third thing that's useful that we can see from this diagram is that node at eat sits on both a virtuous and a vicious circle. So that's a place where we maybe have to monitor behaviours and activities to make sure that people stay within the virtuous circle and don't get diverted off into the vicious circle. So that's the third thing that's useful there. When I'm drawing influence diagrams, I use a whiteboard or scrap paper, pens and pencils and an eraser. I don't go straight to computer with these. There's a lot of scribbling out and trying things again and so on. It's a brain exercise, preferably with a second or third person there. It's to help you think about questions like why did that happen and what happened next and what else might happen, and start linking causes and effects and influences together. the important thing about them and the important thing about the construction process is it's about thinking, and it's about changing your thinking and challenging your thinking. So let's do an example with testing. We want to identify more bugs during testing, because then we won't be identifying them post-release. And the way we're going to do that is by improving testing. So there we see a simple influence diagram. Because we've improved the testing, we're going to identify more bugs during tests, which must be good. But supposing we notice we're identifying more bugs, but we haven't changed anything in our practice of testing, there'll be a different reason. So there could be that the software's just got more bugs in it. So we can't now look at the metric that says we're finding more bugs and say we're doing better testing. That's not necessarily the case. In fact, both things may be going on simultaneously. So now we have a slightly more complicated diagram. We've got two possible reasons why we're identifying more bugs in test. I'm now going to colour code it, so improving the system testing, which is probably a good thing, is in green. Finding more bugs in testing is probably a good thing, so that's in green. But the software having more bugs in it is in red because I want to monitor that. That's possibly something I need to address. So the next stage in drawing the diagram is to say, what could happen as a result of identifying more bugs? Well, we're going to put the developers under pressure because they've got a greater workload. They've got more things to do because they've got a load of bugs to fix, as well as developing features. And so they are under deadline pressure, and the testers will be under deadline pressure because they've got things to retest after the fixes have been done. So everybody will be saying, well, we've got too much to do, we must cut some work. So we've got that deadline pressure, and we've improved system testing, and unfortunately that could mean that somebody says, well, let's reduce the unit test because it doesn't matter if we deliver the software into testing with more bugs in it because they're finding more bugs. And notice now we have a vicious circle of behaviour there, which is unexpected because we've improved the testing. We thought that was a good thing, but actually what that's done is, because we haven't thought about the whole picture, we've actually probably managed to make things worse. Because everybody's under pressure, people are going to be making more mistakes. So in fact, more mistakes are going to end up in the software, more bugs in the software, and because the testers are also under pressure, they're likely to miss more bugs, and so the release software is going to have more bugs in it. And of course we also know, reducing the unit test, there'll be some bugs you find in unit test much more easily. They're much more likely to get missed now. So we have two vicious circles cycling round against each other, which we need to do something about. So developing this diagram helps us through that thinking. Let's do another example. Supposing the organisation wants to increase sales. As testers, we might recommend that we improve the quality of the product, so we might recommend that we improve testing. But the business analysts might say, let's make the product more feature rich, and so they might recommend improving the user stories and requirements. And the salespeople might want to improve time to market, so the project teams, put under pressure to do things more quickly, might look at improving skills so that people can do their work more quickly, and perhaps skills around automation. And the finance people might be looking at saving costs, because if we can reduce costs, we'll either make more profit or we can sell the product more cheaply and consequently make more sales. So there's four good ways of doing improvements to meet the same goal of greater sales. But what if these conflict with each other? So when we improve the testing, if we don't think about time to market, we might adversely affect that and actually increase the time to market. And if we have more user stories, that might mean the projects take longer, so it increases the time to market. And if we send the project team on skills training, they haven't got as much time to spend on their project work, so that all might affect the time to market, which might affect the sales. Furthermore, if the testing is finding more bugs and the developers are not able to finish all the features because they were bug fixing, that reduces the feature content. And if the testing is taking longer and using higher paid, more skilled people and so on, the cost of the project goes up and we might end up reducing profit. So with this diagram, as with the last one, we have unexpected effects. which we need to consider. Now this diagram is just the start of the diagram. I haven't gone into the knock-on from losing sales or profit and what happens next and so on and so forth. But you can start building these through and getting a picture of what's happening right across the organisation. These red arrows might not happen, but we need to take them into account, because when we're doing improvements in any one of those areas, what we need to do is make sure that we don't have an adverse effect on the other areas of improvement. So influence diagrams are really useful to help you identify where to address improvements, and in particular unexpected effects and vicious circles of behaviour that you want to remove. Importantly, it also tells you about where are the virtuous circles of behaviour which you need to leave alone. Step away from those. Don't interfere. Don't deflect people from the good things they're already doing. In particular, don't try and do another layer of improvement, which might actually mean that you turn a virtuous circle into a vicious circle. And I find them useful because it helps me articulate why it's difficult sometimes to do the improvements and what the unexpected effects are. So in particular, talking to the managing director, I find these very useful. When we're driving change, keep how you use these diagrams relevant to your audience. Not everybody wants to see the complexity. I quite often use the influence diagram as a trigger to help me structure a recommendations report, and I may not use the diagram at all in that report. I may use simplified diagrams and some text explanation. But I do have colleagues who will ask questions going to the next level of complexity, and that isn't a problem either. So you might well have people who want to be more rigorous than you are. You'll have people who, or you yourself, might want to go into the full notation. Let people go with them. Let people go with it and do their own thinking. That can only be a good thing. And finally on this, the wording you put in the nodes helps influence the improvement. So for example, earlier we had deadline pressure, we need to cut some work. Well, let's change that to we need to prioritise work, and let's find out what the priorities are for the management team and the managing director. And then let's estimate and plan just for some essential work for the next couple of weeks. And then let's actually deliver that work and build some trust, which means that next time we ask, we'll get a better idea of what the real priorities are. So what we have now is a virtuous circle. Just by changing the wording in that node, instead of doing things that were a bad thing to do, like removing unit testing, we're on to things that are a good thing to do, like improving our estimation and biting work off a little bit at a time. So I've shown you what an influence diagram is and how to construct it, in particular vicious and virtuous circles. And I've talked about why they're useful and using them to drive change, both in the organisation and in your own thinking. In November at EuroSTAR, I'm going to use some real influence diagrams in my talk because I'm going to analyse what happened during the change programme. So you'll see some hand-drawn diagrams there. Some acknowledgements. Stuart, Neil and Graham at the Software Testing Retreat were the people who really showed me first how to do these diagrams, so thank you to them. And there's lots of information out on the internet, just tons of it, lots and lots of examples of different degrees of complexity. So go out and have a look and you'll find a lot of things to help you. Thank you for listening. See you at EuroSTAR 2014 and I hope that was useful. Thanks very much.